In today's video, I take a look at an add-on that has sent the Microsoft Flight Sim community into a frenzy. A simple add-on that changes the very nature of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It would of course be the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 Google Map Replacement mod. In today's video, I take a look at the battle between the two titans of Google and Microsoft and see which one wins in my personal opinion and whether you should put your time into this add-on. Let's get right into this very fierce battle. Now, of course, I was slightly exaggerating it a bit there for the dramatic effect, you know how it is around here. But the point remains the same. We're taking a look at an awesome add-on today, the Microsoft Flight Sim Google Map Replacement tool, which you can get via the link in the description. Now, it does take a bit of setting up, but in comparison to other add-ons I've showcased, such as the AI traffic, which is what you're seeing now, it's relatively easy. Now, what this promises to do, and as you'll see for the comparisons on this video today, is that it replaces the Bing map textures that you see all over the world with Google Map textures. Simple as that. Now, I would say this boils down to personal preference, and I'll of course be leaving my thoughts at the end of this video as well as showing you guys how to install it, because it is much easier than it sounds for something that replaces the look of the whole world. And of course, if you don't like it, don't hold it against me, just leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you do like it, be sure to leave your happy experiences down below. But now, without further delay, let's take a look at it. Okay, so I'm just going to swap over onto the screen to show you what it looks like. Using the magic of cinema, there we go, we've swapped over to the web page, and you can see this is what we're promised. So it says Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 Google Map Replacement, and it does exactly that. There's already some comparison shots on there available, as well as a very good YouTube video which does better comparison shots but doesn't really leave their impression on it. It also tells you how to download it very easily as well. Now, something I experienced is that it might say, or Google Chrome might say, that it can't download it due to virus protection. It's quite an awkward workaround, so it lets you download it, but basically Chrome sends you the link to that web page. And it's not that difficult. I got around it very well. You can see there's been over 77,000 downloads, so it is a very safe bit of software, and I haven't experienced any issues with it. So here is the bit of kit we're using. As you can see right now, we're connected, which is why it says up here back to Bing Maps, and you can see, you'll notice that here it says recently loaded image, and that is of course a taxiway. We're here at Denver International Airport, which I only just found out the other day is notorious for various rather creepy conspiracy theories, but I won't delve into that. Yeah, quite funny but quite scary at the same time. But alas, we're here at Denver, and you can see that we've got a taxiway photo down here. It says recently loaded image, and that's because it's loading it in as we speak. As we climb above the airport, you notice it looks a bit different to how Microsoft Flight Simulator normally looks. It looks, in my opinion, darker, a bit sharper in places, and with a bit more detail, but there's also areas of conflict. Now, because Microsoft Flight Sim has been made to work with Bing, this add-on can result in funny little glitches, such as buildings not being in the right place or looking like they're in the wrong place, or trees being in the wrong area. And that is because, by the very nature of it, Google Maps is a bit more up to date than Bing Maps. In places, Bing Maps is kind of like 10 years out of date, and that results in some buildings being in the wrong place when you bring it to a newer version. But now let's move over to the comparisons before we get into the installation. Of course, I've put the chapters down below so you can skip over to installation if you want to. So here I am taking off from Bristol International Airport. Google Maps is on the left and Bing Maps is on the right. They were both taken at roughly the same time on the same cloud setting, although if you wait to the end you'll see one where it's in exactly the same conditions with no clouds, but I've got to be honest, Microsoft Flight Sim without clouds looks quite unnatural, so I prefer to see the clouds. You can see Google Maps has got a few more glitches because there are a few more inconsistencies. Basically, they kind of haven't made a concise map where it feels exactly the same all over the place, but when it works, I think it does look better. It certainly looks more realistic. It looks a bit darker, a bit sharper, as I've already said, and indeed is more up to date, so I think that's a winner there. But then Bing Maps offers something that we've all grown to love. It offers that slightly more cinematic feel. Slightly warmer, slightly oversaturated in places, I feel. But when Google Maps is consistent, it really does look the part. It looks really realistic. The problem I find with Google Maps is that it often sectors itself off into individual areas, and you'll have a distinct line in between areas. Now, it's not to say Bing Maps doesn't also experience that, but I think it's certainly a major problem with Google Maps. Now, before we move over to our next comparison, we've came over here, Denver. Once again, we are high up in the sky, probably about 15,000 feet, I'd imagine. Maybe a bit higher, but I don't know, it's very hard to judge with low cloud. And you can see with Google Maps, we do get that slightly blue tint compared to the oversaturated tint we get with Bing Maps. Now, throughout the video so far, when you've seen just Microsoft Flight Sim on the screen, it's been Google Maps because that's what we've been using. So what you've been seeing for the most part, except for the comparisons, is indeed Google Maps. Now, indeed, people have been saying that, well, questioning whether weather works and indeed waves work with the Google Map add-on, and indeed they do. As you can see, we've got plenty of snow north of Denver at the moment, which of course reflects real life. I did look at this at the beginning and question whether this was a bug. I thought Denver was quite a hot place, but apparently not. Apparently it's 3 degrees right there Celsius right now, so very chilly. And of course, they've got plenty of snow, and the snow-capped mountains over there, beautiful. Now let's hop into our next comparison. So this is a passenger view landing in Gatwick, roughly same weather conditions, exactly the same time conditions. It looks very nice. So do apologise for the slight bit of lag, especially with the Gatwick mod. It doesn't seem to be very stable with the recent hotfix, so I do apologise, but nonetheless you see a big difference. And yes, again, I would say Google Maps looks a lot more realistic, but Bing Maps looks a bit more cinematic. Maybe that's because I'm used to it, but I do think even in this case Bing Maps does look a bit better, purely because as we get closer to Gatwick, you can see we've got the issue I was talking about earlier, that sudden change with Google Maps because we're looking at a different sector. You can see how it goes from dark to vivid lime green. That's the grass, and that must have been because one was taken in summer, the other was taken in spring or autumn, for example. Not necessarily happens everywhere, but when it does happen, it's quite ugly. And therefore, the first thing I'm going to say in kind of conclusion is that I do think Bing Maps is better if you're always flying GA. If you're flying close to the ground, you'll notice this more, of course, you'll see it more vividly. So I think if you're sticking with general aviation flying, I can't lie, I'd probably stick with Bing Maps. But moving on to our next comparison, we're flying a beautiful British Airways A320 in a slightly dirty fly-by-wire livery, about 10,000 feet above Berkshire, United Kingdom, not too far from Heathrow. And you can see it looks absolutely brilliant. Google Maps looks fantastic compared to Bing Maps. It looks a lot more realistic. Once again, a bit dark, but I've got to be honest, that's probably clouds. But I do think Google Maps looks a lot better. You guys may, of course, disagree. It just looks very nice, in my opinion. I get that people see Bing Maps as being a bit more vivid, a bit more cinematic, a bit more warm and saturated, but I've got to be honest, I fly in real life, and I still think Google Maps looks a bit more realistic, especially when you've got cloud and shadows over it. It's not for everyone, but I would say, overall so far, Bing Maps does a better job when you're closer to the ground, and that's because Microsoft Flight Sim has been modelled around it, suited for that kind of system to be in place, so you'll have the buildings exactly where they should be in correlation to the ground textures from the map. But when you're above 10,000 feet, Google Maps really starts to win. You know, it really looks the part, everything kind of fits into place, and because you haven't got that conflict between photogrammetry or 3D models and the textures, you can't tell that there is actually indiscrepancies down there. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts down below. Now moving back to Denver on the ground in Air Force One, of course, why wouldn't we be in it? Let me show you how it loads up. Sorry, everything's just loading up again because I was just up in the sky. So here we are, we're back on the server. If you click back to Bing Map, it won't actually do anything at the time, I believe. It will actually do something. It will begin to change the map textures, so you might see patches of different green pop up, but it won't do it completely, and there will be conflict between the Google and Bing maps, which makes sense. So if you do want to swap it, you'll need to head back to the main menu, then click inject or uninject, basically, or you can restart the sim if you want to, just to make sure there'll be no conflicts. I also recommend you empty your rolling cache before you even install this as well, because that could result in conflicts with your Bing maps and your Google maps. It makes complete sense, otherwise it will layer two maps over each other. Now, while we're in map server, you do have the option to swap between Google servers and ArcGIS. ArcGIS is a great tool. I use it in college actually to do kind of geography work for my A level. But it does provide, as they say, a bit more of a more natural colour than Google in some areas. So if you want to use it, you can swap over to it. I haven't tried it myself, but I know it has better colour in general. Anyway, this is the application. Not too much to go on about there except donations. If you really do like this product, it's completely free and the developer has clearly spent a lot of time on it, then you can of course donate to thank him. Let me show you how you load it up. So once you've successfully downloaded it, and if you've got that virus issue, there is a workaround, and I've put the workaround in the description. You're going to want to run this as administrator. You will not want Microsoft Flight Sim open while you're doing this. First time, it's just not going to work, so make sure you close your sim. Once you get this, just select a file you want it to install and click install. It doesn't take very long, maybe 30 seconds. Your screen might flicker a bit as it does with quite a few installs, but it's as quick as that. There we go. And then click finish. You might get asked again to run it as administrator, and then it loads up just like that, and we're already in, so it doesn't matter. Easy as that. Now we're going to move over to our final comparison, and I can give you a good talk about it as we're coming down into Gatwick again. And once again, it's slightly laggy, so do excuse me for that, but this is the clear one. So what do I think of it? Well, it's a very nice tool, but it's not for everyone. It's very easy to install once you get past the virus firewall. Once you get past the Windows firewall, if it does stop you, just follow the instructions on the screen. As you've seen from this video, make sure you go to the main menu or indeed restart your simulator when you want to swap what map source you're using. While it's not the way I'd like it to be, it appears this is the way it has to be at the moment. Otherwise, like you've seen, you will get some conflicts. I think Google Maps is very good for high altitude flying. It looks much more realistic, much more like how the real world looks. But when you're closer to the ground, you start to notice the discrepancies that we all know can happen on Microsoft Flight Sim, but you get them to a higher degree. That is because frankly the Bing Maps still provides some of the data, I'm sure, for the stuff like buildings, so you're going to get some sort of conflicts. And when you're getting that conflict with older maps, or indeed newer maps in Google Maps case, that's not going to look as good. So if you're a general aviation pilot and you like to fly low and slow, unless you're in an area where the conflict isn't an issue, or indeed it looks better than Bing Maps, then I'd say overall stick to Bing Maps. But if you're like the majority of people out there and like to fly airliners, then this might be a very good thing for you to check out, because when it works, it really does work, and I think all the comparisons have showed you that. In my opinion, it looks much better. I do apologise for the bad takeoffs and landings, but I've got to be honest, I was more focused on the outside than I was inside. But there we have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It has taken a bit of work. I've been sat here all day trying to get some good comparison shots, so your feedback really does help. From me today, last thing I want to say is thank my channel members. Thank you to you guys. You guys really do help me out. It's a great way of supporting the channel and means I can provide content like this all the time, basically. Let me thank them now. Thank you to HXMe, Maxim Labelle, Simon Schmidt, Siafra, Ethan Bubeck, Jonathan Desmond, Captain Matt Russell, Fanny Leibenberg, Hello, and Erwin K. You guys can of course like, comment and subscribe, that's always enough help, but these first class members really do go above and beyond. Download the add-on, guys, if you agree with me, and if you don't, leave your thoughts down below. I'll see you around. Bye bye.